The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the November session of the Recruiting Insider. This is Kelly Anderson and Matt Lee. We are at the ATA Safety Management Council Convention in Memphis, and we are broadcasting live from the Peabody Hotel. Now listen, to all my redneck friends out there, y'all need to get on down here real quick. Matt is in the blind in the lobby. He says, Kelly, they got ducks walking through the lobby down here. And anyway, he's looking for the best one. I don't know how they're going to feel about Matt taking pot shots. And when he gets up here, he's getting out of the blind now. When he gets up here, we'll get him on the webinar. Of course, I'm being facetious, but they do have ducks in the lobby, so you got to come see that. Hey, before we get going, I don't want to forget to tell you all this. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Next week, on Thursday, man, I hope we can just turn it all off and spend some really quality time with our families and give thanks for just the blessings that we've had individually, corporately, and as a country. And also, I'd like to say, talk about a blessing. We exceeded 1,000 registrants for our webinar this month. We broke the 1,000 mark, and I don't take that lightly as well. So this month we're going to talk about how to increase recruiting department productivity, and I want to, of course, thank HireRight for their support, and also Ramsey Media Works for their support of the Recruiting Insider call. And we actually have a live audience here at the Peabody today, and a small live audience, but one nonetheless. And I appreciate those that have come into the room to enjoy the webinar as we get into this. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Matt, straight out of the duck blind, in camo. I almost didn't see you walk up there, brother. What I don't understand is, why do you have to have camo on when you're in the blind anyway? Okay, here's Matt.
Well, thank you for that, Kelly. And we always like to have fun down here, and he's not kidding when we say that this is a nice place, and you should make the journey down here for sure. So today we're going to talk about where to fish for drivers, and we're going to talk about a few just specific things that we're seeing work across the board in multiple areas. And again, this is just a very small sample of what we're using out there and what we're seeing work. But I did want to bring these three things to you today. And so these are some of the ways to fish the main channels online. One is social media, and we continue to gain momentum when it comes to Facebook. I think the statistics show that there's about 96% of company drivers that are actually on Facebook today. So it's a great resource for us to find drivers. But Facebook now has a new program where you're able to profile drivers based on their searches, based on who they are. And so you can now serve up ads, not just boosted ads, but you can actually serve up ads and then ask them to fill out a short form without ever leaving Facebook. And so we're finding great success using that new tool from Facebook. And again, it's asking them basically to fill out a short form, which then goes straight to your recruiting team and able to follow up with those specific candidates. So the second thing that we're seeing success with is Google. And there's multiple ways to use Google today. The traditional search where the actual ads pop up. Now Google has done a good job of kind of hiding those ads within the search. So it's typically the top three and the bottom three when it comes to the actual Google traditional search. But there are ways now to use Google through competitor targeting and being able to really drill down on specific geographies to be able to reach those potential candidates that are out there searching for jobs. And so the third thing that I wanted to talk about today were aggregator sites, not alligators, but aggregators. And we're seeing some success using some of those particular sources. whether that be in Indeed or Jobs to Careers or LinkUp, just to name a few of the actual aggregators out there. But those job sites are a little bit different because they're actually scraping from other job boards. And so they have a pretty significant following and a pretty significant audience to be able to serve up ads. So those are three ways that we're seeing out there in kind of the main channel, but we definitely need to make sure that we have our foundations in place before we start the campaigns. And so what I mean by that is Facebook, if you're going to use the Facebook strategy, you have to make sure that you have the proper page built, the proper team in place to manage that, because it will drive a lot of questions. And you need to be prepared to be able to respond to those questions. And the other thing is the landing page. I cannot express this enough, the critical need for a landing page today. We have to have a driver-specific page that's going to allow the driver a way to communicate with us how they want to communicate, whether that be by phone, by filling out a short form, or actually filling out the full app. So we definitely need to be able to do that. And I put a couple of examples here of the short form of what that might look out like, as well as making it very easy for them to be able to one-touch dial from their mobile phone, as well as fill out a full application. So again, very critical to let the drivers today communicate with us how they want to communicate. So those were just a couple of ways that we're finding drivers out there, and hope that you guys are having success using some of those tools. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Hey, Matt, I appreciate that. And I know you can go so much deeper than you just did, but in 5 minutes, you can't go. You got to use topwater bait on that, don't you, there, Matt? So, all right, we're talking ducks and we're talking fish today. I guess you can tell I've been at this conference for 2 days and about wore out. So, having some fun. But hey, let's get in. This is a serious topic. How to increase recruiting department structure. Recruiting department productivity, excuse me. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is structure. And the first thing on top of that is, you've heard it before, if a salesperson, if there is anything that can distract a salesperson and or take a salesperson away from selling, it will. And I just heard a text, make sure nobody's saying, okay, good deal. I'm about to say, oh, somebody's not saying, Kelly, there's audio issues, because we are in a bad place to have to try to fix that. So, all right. If there's anything that can take a recruiter and distract a recruiter from recruiting, it will. So if you can, have your recruiter focused on nothing but recruiting. Now, I realize some folks in the call may be small, and the recruiter is having to teach orientation and other jobs as well. And folks, you know, one way to overcome the orientation challenge is, you know, hire a semi-retired school teacher or somebody that wants to come in, teach your orientation, and go home, and leave your recruiter where they can take care of recruiting. Now, the next piece that comes up is, you know, what if I need more drivers? You know, if I need 2 to 3 drivers a week, one recruiter focused can do that. Now, let's say you need to have 4 to 6 drivers, do I hire another recruiter? I would say no. I would hire a processor, because now the recruiter can take the initial recruiting calls, do the pre-qualifications, do the sales job, get the applications, and the processor supporting the recruiter, working right there with them, can take care of run the reports, getting employment verifications, and all those things. And here's the other thing. They back up the recruiter on the recruiting calls. So now they become a recruiter in training. I can hire processors all day long, and then train them to be recruiters through the processing process. And by the way, when I look for somebody in my recruiting team, or frankly any team, the very first thing I look for is somebody with a positive attitude, then an extrovert personality, and then we can give them the skills they need for the rest of the job. You know, the other thing, let's say you're a company that you need owner-operators, you need company drivers, you need students. Many times companies will just say, hey, answer the phone, recruit whoever's on the phone. When you do that, you're going to end up with a lot of students, some company drivers, and almost no owner-operators. But here's a way to do that. figure out how many owner-operators you need a week, and then we'll focus a primary responsibility of that many recruiters to give you that productivity. Second, with companies, how many company drivers do you need? Let's focus as a primary responsibility the right number of recruiters to give you that many company drivers, and then the same with students. And then although I'm the primary, let's say Matt's the primary owner-operator recruiter, and Pat's the, freaking somebody out of my audience here, Pat is the primary student recruiter, and I'm the primary company driver recruiter. Well, I back Matt up. If he's on the phone with an owner-operator, and I'm not on the phone, and an owner-operator calls, I'm going to take that call. But if he's not on the phone, he's going to take it, or I'm going to transfer it to Matt. And then, Pat backs me up as well. And then he backs up Pat, or vice versa. And so what happens is we have the primary responsibility, which gives the pride of ownership and responsibility. But we also have the secondary where we back up the other recruiter. Every time I put that structure in place with a company that recruits multiple types of drivers, that the number of drivers in each category have come up where the fleet has wanted them to be. Whereas previously they were getting one or two of the other types, but not getting the owner-operators. The owner-operators seem to be the one that always suffers the most. And frankly, students are easy. So they get lots of students and they don't get the company drivers they need either. So the next is the department process. We have to empower our recruiters with clearly defined hiring criteria. Whenever I see recruiters that are not empowered to make a contingent offer, not empowered to make a hiring decision, they don't close. And so the call ends up with total ambiguousness, meaning they get to the end of the call and they're like, yeah, go fill out an application. And then they get the application filled out, and then the recruiter's like, well, okay, we're going to work on it, we're going to look at it, and we'll let you know. Because they can't say, man, John, based on what I'm seeing here, I don't see any reason we can't move forward on this, because they don't have that authority and they don't want to get in trouble from safety for doing it. I know of a guy, I've known him now for 8 years or so, and in the last 8 years, he's had about 5 different jobs. Every time he goes to a new fleet, he puts in a process where no recruiters can review and authorize applications. Now, his excuse for this is because, their hiring criteria is so intricate. It really takes the power of discernment that only safety would have. Well, here's what's interesting. I went back to his department at one of his companies, and the person that was authorizing applications for recruiters had only been working in the transportation industry for 30 days. So don't lie to me. If it's because you're a control freak, say, hey, I'm a control freak and I want to fail at recruiting. I want my company to stack trucks against the fence, and I want to get fired again. And by the way, you can tell I'm just a little lit on that. But let's be real, because that is exactly what happens. Recruiters don't close. Drivers who need a job today, not 2 months from now. And if they don't have a reason, see, people that have had a job too long forget what it's like not to have a job. And they forget that, if I didn't have a paycheck coming in this Friday, I would be on a full court press looking for a job until I have a reason not to. And so if they hang up from one of us folks and they don't have a reason not to make that next phone call, they're going to make the next phone call. And then what are you left with? You're left with those that are left. And if they're left, there's a good chance there's a reason they're left. And then we wonder why our productivity is going down, our turnover rate's going down, our safety is getting worse, our compliance is getting worse. It's kind of counterintuitive. If you speed up the recruiting process, get them off the market on the first call, you win. If you lengthen this process, you lose. And frankly, I see a few folks on the call that are do HR for large corporations that are and recruit non-drivers. And frankly, folks, this works in the non-driving arena as well. Warehouse workers, office folks. If you're having trouble filling positions, consider what we're saying here on the recruiting process. I am not saying lower your standards. Frankly, use this and raise your standards. So safety I'm not saying that safety can't review the applications, but do it after we've worked the application, got them set up for orientation. My safety department didn't even do it until the drivers were in orientation. Why? Because we had a standard and consistent set of hiring criteria. See, if you change your hiring criteria with the wind, well, we got a problem with that. But and frankly, you're going to have a problem with that, because how can you defend that in court? So we had a set and standard set of hiring criteria. If the drivers were within those standards, we recruited them. If they were outside of those standards, we cut bait. I find recruiters, when I go to a company, that recruiting has to check everything through safety before they can do anything with it. I find recruiters working applications that they know won't qualify just to prove the safety. They won't qualify. Now you're double and triple losing. You're losing because of the time that's being spent there, and you're also losing the money that's being wasted there. So recruit, but basically, if they're on the fence, and let's talk about it. Inside the standards, let's move forward. Outside the standards, cut bait. If they're on the fence and you think they ought to fall inside, well, let's talk about those, and then move it on down the line. So how do we increase the productivity? Here's kind of my silver bullet. I was talking to Pat about this yesterday, and first off, we answer the phone, and Matt has told us in previous sessions, if you get an internet lead, which is the number one, short form leads, the number one lead source that you get off of all the different type of targeted online media and off your landing page. If you call that person within 5 minutes, you are 900% more likely to recruit that driver. So you call them. And as a result of this phone call, hey, John, tell me a little about yourself. Where you been working? What you been doing? And he said, I've been driving for the last 19 years, and I'm working at Bubba's. It's not working out. Well, really? How long you been there? Why is it not working out? I'm just kind of filling the blank, having a conversation, finding out what his pain point is, talking about how we can meet that pain point if we can. If we can't, we cut bait. Let them know that right up. Let's be honest. But if we can, let them know how we can meet that pain point. I then continue the conversation, switch it over to safety, tell them a little about your safety record, your accidents, your tickets. And if that's all good too, then I'm going to be the first to show acceptance. And I'm going to say, hey, John, I got to tell you, based on what I'm seeing here, guys, don't call drivers liars. I don't know. Everybody says, well, if everything you're telling me is true, then. Don't say that. Say, John, based on what I'm seeing here, because, folks, I understand you've been lied to, and so is the driver. But you know what? That driver isn't somebody else. Let's treat people based on who they are, not who somebody else was. This guy hasn't lied to us yet. Now, hey, if we run a report and find out that they did lie, well, now treat them like a liar. But until that point, don't carry that negative baggage into the conversation. Man, John, based on what I'm seeing here, I don't see any reason we couldn't move forward on your application. Matter of fact, it sounds like with the 2 weeks notice, you'd want to be here on the 17th. And they go, oh, yeah, that'd be about right. Okay, well, this is what we need to do then. And you work out a plan of action. As a result of being on the phone with you, we're working toward a target orientation date. We're working on a plan of action, which says, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you a link to this application and a little bit of information about the company. We haven't talked about everything, so I'll put the whole package in there for you. But the most important piece is that link to the application. And can you fill that out this afternoon? Oh, yeah, I'll get that done about 5 o'clock this evening. Well, excellent. So fill that out, and tomorrow morning I'm going to come in looking for it, and I'll get started on it right away. And why don't you call me at 1 o'clock? So your plan of action is what you're going to do, what they're going to do, and when they will call you back. And please hear me, I put it in caps, they will call you back. Most recruiters say, I will call you back. Well, the problem is you get busy. You had every intention to call them back, but you got busy and you didn't. In 19 years of being the undercover trucker, which, by the way, tomorrow at noon or so, if you guys got the email for it, I don't have my calendar in front of me. I'm doing a webinar tomorrow for the ATA Business Solutions, sponsored by Sperian, called The Undercover Trucker. And 19 years of being hired by companies to go undercover through their entire recruiting and orientation process as a driver, I have only been called back twice. By the way, when we do surveys, Impact has proactive retention surveys, but one of the surveys we do is we contact drivers that have applied to companies and did not go to work for you to ask them why. Why did you choose not to go to work for my company? The number one response: nobody called me. So set the plan of action of when they will call you back, because that way your phone is ringing and such, but you're loading your phone with the people that you need to talk to as well that are in your process. So let's go to the next level. Driver pay, recruiter pay. I am not a fan of bonuses. You know, folks, you want to get me upset. Question my character. Question my integrity. And the minute you pay me a bonus, somebody's going to start questioning the reason that I made the decision, my motivation for recruiting that driver. And therein, we're going to have a problem. My integrity is my integrity, and I hope yours is as well. And you know what? Pay me a fair wage, and I will give you everything I've got. Now, okay, I understand that not everybody's wired that way. You know, there's some folks, you give a bonus out there, and they're going to give you a little more energy. So I just tell you straight up, I'm not a fan of bonuses. I've seen them so many times backfire. I've seen them demotivate groups because they got so close to getting it, but then didn't get it. And then, well, sometimes we give it. You got close. You tried hard, so now we get it. We give it to you. Well, now that's backfiring on you as well. And now if it's individually based, we're going to talk about that on the next page. I'll just hit that right this second. If it's individually based, it kills teamwork. Because it doesn't do me any good to talk to Matt's driver because I'm not getting any money off Matt's driver. So, yeah, Matt's busy right now. You want to call him back? Click. I've seen that stuff. I've seen companies with individual-based recruiting bonuses, and their department was cutthroat. And then recruiting directors are spending all their time in fights over whose lead it really was in the first place. So they're not working together. There's no synergy. The morale is down because now I'm working in a cutthroat environment, and it creates the internal arguments. I am totally against individual bonuses. If you're going to do one, consider a group bonus. You know, now, because we want to increase our teamwork, we want to have positive peer pressure. We want to have synergy that benefits the company, not just an individual. So, and also consider it on a 3 or 4 leg process. Let's say each leg is worth $100 per person per month. So maybe I've got up to $400 I can make here, or up to $300 if it's a 3-legged stool. And the first is off empty trucks. Folks, if we have more than 2.5% empty trucks in our fleet, we lose that $100. We got to keep the empty trucks below 2.5%. Next, if our turnover rate on our fleet, and maybe because it's recruiting, maybe you say turnover in the first 90 days, so now you're motivating them to make strategic touch points in the first 90 days. My recruiting department did that, and we lowered the turnover rate 27%. So maybe you just say the turnover rate in the first 90, because recruiters can really have some impact there. If it's below X amount of percent, you got $100 on that leg. You know what? If we're low on our recruiting budget, which I think a lot of you won't do because you don't have budgets. Which, by the way, I hated putting together every quarter my budget. Actually, it was an annual budget, but we revisited it every quarter. But you know what? In hindsight, I am so glad we did a budget because I didn't have to beg, borrow, and steal every month for my recruiting budget. I had it set, and it was based on my actual cost of hire. So I knew how many drivers we needed, and I could back into what it was going to cost me in every different aspect, from advertising to consumer reports, to transportation, to physicals, to drug test orientation costs, everything. You tell me how many drivers you need, I can back into that number. And I had the budget set, and I didn't have to fight for it. Some of you folks, I see you every month having to ask and try to get approval. And that's just painful. Not as painful as, or more painful than what I was experiencing, and I just didn't realize it. when I was living it. But having a budget's really, really handy. So a number of drivers recruited, could be also a leg that hey, we want to have, 12 people in orientation or 3 people in orientation. You hit that every week, then you're going to get your bonus. But so you have to weigh these, which are good, which are bad, which way you'd want to go, what you'd like to reward. But you know what? If you lose it all, if you lose the bonus off one leg, it still stands for the other 2 legs. You can lose it on one, but make it on 2 or even on 1. But it's every month stands on its own. That way you don't kill productivity and morale long term. So that pretty much, folks, is takes us through. Man alive, I got done 5 minutes early. Matt, I did not mean to do that. But hey, I do want to say this then, since I do have 5 minutes. I am here at the ATA Safety Management Council, and folks, I am the chairman of the Driver Recruiting, Driver Retention, and Driver Wellness Committee. There is no subject more important in our industry than recruiting and retention. I would think you would all agree, and not only of drivers but technicians. I need your help. When I took over this committee, and I'm going to tell you, we've got some really great people in the committee, and they all agree. This is not a committee wherein we get together once a year or twice a year, have a speaker come in, give us a little update on some industry news that frankly we could probably hear about through one of the other news sources, keep a few minutes and leave. This is a committee that is interested in changing the transportation industry, influencing the transportation industry, and addressing the top 3 hottest subjects in our industry. And now you may be thinking, man, I can't afford to be a member. It's $350 a year to be a member of the SMC. And also, maybe you can or cannot be here at the convention. Folks, we're going to have a bi-monthly phone call every other month. Have a phone call of the committee. And so even if you can't make it, but you want to be a part of it, you could be a part of it. So $350, we're going to have a conference call every other month, plus our regular face-to-face meetings. And I'm asking you for your help. If you're interested, please send me an email, say, Kelly, have them send me some information on that committee. I am interested in being a part and helping our industry. And with that, folks, thank you so much. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and may the Lord bless you. Bye-bye.